Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. One of the major criticisms of the Quran is the apparent discrepancy in the total sum of fractional shares allocated for inheritance as outlined in verses 11, 12, and 176 of Surah An-Nisa. In some cases, the prescribed shares exceed the total estate, while in others they fall short. This phenomena can be observed in several inheritance scenarios. Consider the case of a man who is survived by his wife, two daughters, and both parents. According to Quranic injunctions, the wife is entitled to 1/8 of the inheritance. The two daughters collectively receive 2/3. The father is allotted 1/6. The mother is also allotted 1/6. Summing these fractions, we come to the total fraction of 27/24, which is bigger than 1. Here, the total exceeds 1, requiring a proportional reduction, a process known as OWL, to ensure all heirs receive their fair shares while maintaining the total estate at 100%. In contrast, consider another scenario where a man is survived by his wife, one daughter, and both parents. So the fractions are mentioned here: 1/8, 1/2, half, 1/6, and 1/6. Summarizing these fractions again, we get to 23/24, which is less than 1. So we are going to be faced with some leftover of the inheritance. In this case, the total is less than 1, leaving an unallocated portion of the inheritance. This surplus is typically distributed according to Islamic legal principle, often through RAD, redistribution among the heir, or allocation to other beneficiaries. Before proceeding further, I want to clarify that this discussion does not address the wisdom or reason behind the differences in inheritance shares based on gender or other factors. That is a separate topic requiring its own discussion. Additionally, it is important to note that verse 11 of Surah An-Nisa explicitly states that before distributing inheritance, the deceased's will must be executed, and any outstanding debts must be settled. This means that individuals have the right to allocate their wealth as they wish through a will. The Quranic inheritance rules only apply in cases where no will has been left or when there is still remaining wealth after fulfilling the deceased's financial obligations, provided the heirs choose to distribute it according to Quranic guidelines. Today we can solve this inheritance problem using basic mathematics in a way that adjusts the total fractions so that they sum to 1. If we adhere strictly to the wording of the Quranic verses on inheritance, we can formulate the problem as follows: 1/8 of inheritance plus 2/3 of inheritance plus 1/6 of inheritance plus another 1/6 of inheritance is equal to 1. So why do I write 1/8 of the inheritance and not 1 or the amount of inheritance? Because we are going to have a combination of different heirs, different people taking a share of this money. It is not only one person. If there was only one person, we could write the 1 or the exact amount. If we define the total adjusted inheritance as X, then the equation becomes 1/8 of X plus 2/3 of X plus 1/6 of X plus 1/6 of x is equal to 1. To understand the logic and the reason why we are doing this, I'd like to give you a simpler example that is easier probably to understand. Let's imagine we have a pizza, as shown here, that we want to divide it between two people. So it's going to be 50-50. Half goes to one person and the other half to other person. Since we know it's one whole pizza and we won't be in short of any more pizza, or we won't be left with an extra piece of pizza. In other words, because it's dividable between two halves, then we can put one here, no problem with that. Now imagine we are adding a third person to this pizza party. Then we add this one to the equation. It has to be plus 1/3 of the pizza is equal to 1. Now we cannot put 1 here. We have to put x that represent the number of shares that it has to be defined again in order for honoring all these shares at the same time. Otherwise, we would be left with either extra pizzas or we'd be short of another slice. That's why we put x, an unknown number of slices here. We can't put just one pizza there. It is the same logic we use for the mathematical operation that we are using for the inheritance problem. So it's easy. We combine the fractions. We factor out x here. We through the lowest common denominator, we add up the fractions together. We come to 8/6 times x is equal to 1. Then we find the x. The 8 here at the bottom here represents the number of the slices we need to cut the pizza to be dividable to these three people with these exact shares. So that's what that 8 means. Then we put that 6/8 in place of x. So we will have half of the 6/8 is equals to 3/8 at the end. And also 1/3 of 6/8 is equal to 2/8. What it means is that the person who already had half a pizza now will get only 3 slices. Because there is a new one coming in and we want to share the pizza with him. And in the meantime, the total amount of the pizza is not increased. It's the same single pizza that we are sharing with more people. Why are we giving him less? There's some relationship, some reason. Maybe they don't want to eat as much as the others. So we are giving him less than or her less than the other two. Why is it justified to do this? If we look at the relative proportions of the pizzas here, when there was only 2 people, the proportion to each other, the fractions were equal. They had equal shares of the pizza, right? Each half. When we compare it here, although they will get only 3 pizzas, but both they would still get 3 out of 8. So their share compared to each other is exactly the same, is equal. It's not the same compared to whole pizza, it's the same compared to each other in terms of the proportion of the whole pizza. When we compare 1/2 to 1/3, it would be 1.5 times. So the person taking half here, at the beginning, with 1/3, there's 1.5 times more than this person, more than this fraction. If we see it here, it's the same thing. This person getting 3 slices is 1.5 times more than the one that gets only 2 slices. So the same relative proportions remain in place with no changes. That's why we won't have objection to redefining the number of slices. It's because now we want to fulfill all these shares at the same time. And in order to make the pizza divisible according to this new combination of the shares, we have to cut it in 8 pieces. That's exactly the logic we are going to follow with the inheritance problem as well. So we put an x as the unknown amount of the inheritance instead of that word of inheritance there. So it's exactly the same as the Quran wordings, 1/8 of the x, 2/3 of the x, and so on. Then we simplify this by finding the lowest common denominator, which is 24. We convert each fraction, the original fraction in our problem here, to a new fraction considering the lowest common denominator, 24. This one becomes 16/24, and the same with other ones. So we put these new converted fractions in the same place as the old ones here. Now we factor out x out of all of them and combine 3/24 plus 16/24 plus so and so. We get this fraction here, 27/24 times x is equal to 1. Then we solve for x, we get 24/27, and x becomes 8/9. So let's see what this 8/9 means. The result x equals to 8/9 means that the actual state must be adjusted to 8/9 of the originally expected total in order to satisfy all given inheritance shares. This situation arises because the given fractions exceed the total state. They sum to more than 1. That's what it means and why we did this operation, requiring a proportional reduction. So one would say that 1,000 years ago or 1,400 years ago, this math, let's say, wasn't available. But as we saw in other ways like owl or rat, they still managed to adjust this proportionality of the shares compared to each other. So who knows, maybe in 1,000 years from now, they would have other ways to do the same thing. That something changes. It's the important thing with the Quranic commands is the fact that Quran expects us to do our best. What counts is our best. It's not that it has to be exactly according to certain rules or according to certain shape and forms. Although most people may tell you that, but that's not exactly what Quran teaches us. Quran expects us to do our best effort, and that's it. Whatever it is, if it's for God, then that is acceptable to God, inshallah. Let's assume that the deceased person leaves behind an estate of $90,000. However, based on the given Quranic shares, the total inheritance must be adjusted using our calculated fraction, 8/9. The corrected estate value is going to be 80,000 as shown here. Now we distribute the adjusted 80,000 based on the original fractions. This is actually the x that we found. So we put it back in, in front of the original fractions that we have. So the x is now 80,000 based on that given 90,000 original amount. Now we just put it in this equation and get its share. So 1/8 of 80,000 is 10,000. 2/3 is this amount. 1/6 is this amount, and also the other 1/6. So summing all these shares, as you can see, it comes to 90,000. And yes, ChatGPT got this wrong. The adjusted state ensures all shares add up correctly without exceeding the total inheritance. The method we use to adjust the inheritance is justified because, again, it preserves the relative proportions between the heirs. Even when the total inheritance is scaled down, this ensures fairness while maintaining the prescribed Quranic shares. Compare the original and adjusted fractions. We started with these original shares here, assuming a total inheritance of one full estate. However, their sum is bigger than one. So to correct this, we scaled everything by 8 over 9 so that the adjusted inheritance total becomes exactly 1. So all these details are shown here. The original shares are these fractions, and then the adjusted one are these ones that they've been multiplied by 8 over 9, and we get the new fractions. It's just like re-slicing the same pizza. Now let's compare the ratios between the heirs before and after. Ratio of daughter to mother, the original ratio, as shown here, ends up with 4. Ratio of daughters and mother, same couple of the heirs, after adjustment is still 4. So because these are both equal, then we are allowed to do this because we are not changing anyone's portion compared to the other ones. Same thing with the comparison between a spouse to father. It was 3/4, and after all the adjustment it is still 3/4. Since the ratios remain unchanged, the proportional fairness among heirs is preserved. Even though the absolute amounts of inheritance were reduced, the relative shares of each heir remain identical. This is why the method is justified. No heir unfairly given more or less than their intended portion relative to others. That's the key, relative to others. The critics of these verses argues, why didn't the merciful God decree the inheritance shares in a way that their total would naturally sum to 1, eliminating the need for the rules of owl, adjustment, or rat redistribution? In their view, the existence of this issue suggests that the Quran is not a divine book, or if it is, then how can an all-wise and all-knowing God be unaware of basic mathematical principles? Needless to say, glory be to God, He is far above what we utter. To address this question, let's first examine the total number of fractional shares mentioned in verses 11, 12, and 176 of Surah An-Nisa. In these 3 verses, 6 specific fractions are provided for inheritance distribution. These are the 6 fractions included in those 3 verses, and they are related to one specific heir, as you can see. Now we can consider each of these fractions as a binary variable, meaning that each fraction can either be present showing as a 1 or absent showing as 0. In a given inheritance scenario, we can analyze the number of possible distribution if we do this. Since the entire inheritance goes to a single heir, when only one person exists, we are effectively left with 5 binary variables that determine inheritance shares in different scenarios. Mathematically, the number of possible combinations of heirs is 2 to the power of 5, which equals to 32. Thus, there are at least 32 different inheritance scenarios that frequently arise, each with a different combination of heirs. That means in one case there is a mother present, in the other case the mother may not be present, or there could be a son in one scenario, or in the other scenario there could not be any son, but there could be 2 daughters, or so on. To illustrate this, imagine a 5-slot binary system where each position represents whether a specific fraction applies in a given inheritance scenario. This is the 5-slot binary arrangement that we consider. Each combination represents a unique case where some heirs are present and others are not. Now, if God had assigned unique and separate fractions for each of these 32 plus scenarios, ensuring their sum equal to 1 in each case, we would need dozens of different fractional sets, leading to a complex and difficult to follow inheritance system. Instead, in just 3 verses, God has provided only 6 universal fractions that can be applied across all inheritance scenarios. These fractions are designed not to sum to 1, but to maintain the proportional relationship between heirs in any given case. This system is far more efficient and elegant than an exhaustive list of predefined cases. It allows for flexibility and fairness while keeping the instructions concise and universal. Rather than seeing this as a flaw, it is actually a remarkable mathematical and logical feat, a testament to the wisdom of the Creator. The fact that such a precise system emerges from only 6 fractions in 3 verses is proof of the divine knowledge behind the Quran. May our faith in God and His message, the Quran, grow stronger each day. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time.